been doing this YouTube stuff for a while now, you know, a couple of years here and there, you know what I mean? Just like get out there, sit down, ride like I am now, get the camera running, thoroughly unscripted, haven't got a single idea as to what I'm going to talk about, but just basing everything basically upon what is being sent to me in a form of, like, in this particular case, you know, a private message here on YouTube, which is of course quite cool. So, you know, I've got a kind of a subject, but essentially now it's a question of what I'm going to say. And obviously you people out there, you know, you like the entertaining way in which I do delivery. Some of you people like my argument or where I'm coming from, and the fact that I'm not necessarily continuing with some of the, you know, straightforward lines that the average individual would come out with if they were associated with things such as tarot cards or Ouija boards and so on and so forth. Because, like, I do some videos and they get people interested and curious, and they ask me a question, and then, you know, I have to provide them with essentially what was within probably the original video that they had actually watched, but their minds had not quite twigged onto where the argument was. And of course, if the argument wasn't in that video, then it would have of course been in probably at least 75% of all of the other videos which I had of course made upon this channel, and therefore they could have used the search facility on my channel itself. Go to my channel page, there should be a search bar there, so you can search through all of my videos and find things which would talk more about the subject in question. Not everybody does that. It's more a question of watch, let's say, 5 seconds of one particular video, jump to a conclusion, and then ask me a question. Now, obviously, I don't know for sure, but I'm getting the feeling that this one particular inquirer does kind of fall into that category. Probably not deliberately. I mean, you know, we've all done that. We've all made that mistake once in a while. I just tend to get a little more above the average, or seemingly above the average, requests of this particular type for reasons unknown to myself. This one says, "Hi. I watch your videos on demonology and have a question for you. Is it possible for a person to sell their soul?" Now that's the kind of question which, when it's asked to you, typically speaking, if you're someone like myself, it has an effect. You know, it's like being concussed. It's like having a stone, you know, being fired at about 300 foot per second towards your forehead or maybe your temples, and kind of like stops you in your tracks. Now the reason for this in my particular case is I just think to myself, what and why, basically. Now, what do you mean by the soul? What does anybody mean by the soul? I know what I mean by something physical, like my mobile phone, my cell phone, as you people call it in America. It has certain properties. It could be sent through in the post. You know, it's flat. You can fit into an envelope. You could sell that and actually make some money from it. Obviously, I'm on contract, so I'm not going to do that. But you get my drift. Something which is physical, you know, can actually be sold. You know, and you can actually get some profit from that. But what precisely is a soul? It is a theological construct, okay? It's a mythological construct. We don't understand what the soul is, where it is, and so on and so forth. In the ancient days of medicine, people would actually cut open the bodies of hung criminals to try and find out where in the head the soul was. They would do the same sorts of thing with animals, because the process of dissection in some particular cases was the search for the soul or spirit or driving force of that particular animal. Now these days, medical science seems to have reached a point whereby it's decided more or less that the soul, if it exists at all, is probably not within the physical form. Therefore, it's not necessarily something that's quite as tangible as, let's say, in this particular example, my mobile or cell phone, depending upon, of course, which country you come from and your pronunciation and so on and so forth. So, if you don't properly understand the concept of the soul, it isn't something which is physical and easy to move about or manipulate in whatever way, then you've got to think about why on earth would you be selling it, and what would the results of that sale of that aforementioned soul be. For if you think that there is a specific or reliable result which you can get from it, you would of course have to provide not anecdotal evidence, but of course more detailed evidence that the process of doing that particular operation which you consider to be the sale of your soul would in fact have those particular benefits for yourself. However, in this particular case, that information is lacking. Quite substantially lacking. Therefore, what is the purpose in thinking that a particular operation would sell your soul? Considering, of course, that you don't actually know what it would feel like or what it would seem like to have your soul surgically removed from your body, by whatever spiritual means you think that can happen. Hmm? Hmm? Yes. Yes, it's beginning to make sense to you now, isn't it? Yes, somehow, possibly, if you're really lucky, the penny might be dropping somewhere inside that dark, grey matter of your brain. Or not, as the case may be. Why? For what reason? And how? And to whom? Who would buy it? I haven't got a use for a soul. I don't know where I'd put it. I haven't got that many storage devices which are ideal for, in fact, the entrapment of a soul. Some people say that a crystal could do it. But how do they prove that there's a soul in there, and how would they define a soul, and how would they detect a soul, and how would they keep it in? Yes. Too many questions, you see. No answers. At all. And those who do provide the answers are, of course, lying, cheating, stealing evil bastards, really, aren't they? Yes. But some people just don't realise that. And taking that into account, it is, of course, pretty bloody stupid to indeed ask somebody whether you can sell a soul, or indeed how it should be done. Oh, there may be various different religious hocus pocuses, which presuppose that, oh yes, you are selling your soul when you do this, yes, yes. And the people who actually believe in that bollocks happen to be rather intellectually low. I mean, the average IQ of the human species is about 100, which is pathetic, really. And so maybe they're a little lower, maybe they've got a bit too much passion inside themselves, and they find it hard to distinguish reason, rationality, and fact from, in fact, the way that they feel about something. Because if they feel very good or very positive or very strongly about something, in their own little mind, it becomes real. Because they're not capable of applying any form of rational or scientific thought to the ideas that they're dealing with. Okay? Is that understood? Yes. In the old days, when I was just knee-high to a grasshopper, a bit of a neophyte in this old occultism business, you know what I mean? People always used to say, magic is the art and science of changing conformity with the will. Yeah, way back in those days, yes. And I thought that maybe, just maybe, these people would be able to apply some form of scientific reason to what they were doing and what they were talking about. And I tried to persuade people to do the same and try and apply a bit of thought. Just a little, here and there, a little sprinkling, like you would put a bit of pepper on a plate of chips, maybe. Yes. Just a little sprinkle of thought. No. Because to be a real magician these days, you need to do more bollocks talking, yes. And convince people of things which you think are real because some other bugger told it to you or you saw it on some stupid YouTube video. And you didn't actually think about the words that were being used. And you chose to believe it because they were someone who had some kind of apparent authority. Which is moronic. Totally moronic. So, why ask a question to which there can't be an answer? Huh? Why? Why? I mean, I can ask someone, can I have a cup of tea, please? I know what a cup of tea looks like. I've got a good idea of the ingredients, hot water, sweeteners in my particular case, a tea bag of the right variety and type, yes, Or maybe if you're using an infuser, you could actually use some leaf tea. Yes. You can let it to infuse for a certain number of minutes, roughly speaking, bit of leeway there, okay. And then, of course, you can dilute it with a splash of cold water just to make it drinkable. You could, of course, have a herbal tea, but, of course, you have to specify whether you want, you know, the regular or black tea. Or maybe you would like to have something more exotic, like a chamomile. Yes. But, you know, that's sort of easy to discuss because we know precisely what we're talking about. Whereas if you talk to anyone about the idea of the soul, okay, you may get more than one response. Yes, you might, possibly, arguably, get more than one response, yes. Might get 40 different responses from 40 different people. Some people might be very confused and actually give you 2 different responses because they themselves don't know what they're talking about, which means a potential 60 different responses from 40 different people. And yet you're asking me this as if it's clear cut. And your own behaviour does not surprise you.